Chapter 521, 300, Slaying the Gods. Night King falls. As soon as Shen Qinghan's thought moved, the Palace of Water God in her Sea of Consciousness immediately teleported at high speed to the front of Lin Zikan. Lin Zikan, who was rapidly descending in Shen Qinghan's Sea of Consciousness, stopped descending the moment he saw the Palace of Water God and quietly floated motionless in front of it. Shen Qinghan watched this scene in her Sea of Consciousness and found it quite magical. It was incredibly unbelievable. Why would there be a Lin Zi in the Sea of Consciousness? Was this the real Lin Zi? Or was it just a figment of my imagination? Yes, it must be just imagination, just like how thoughts in the day bring dreams at night. Let's try to interact with Lin Zi in the Sea of Consciousness. Thinking this, Shen Qinghan continued to control the Palace of Water God to approach Lin Zikan in the Sea of Consciousness, trying to interact with him through the palace. But before she could make an interaction, a huge figure appeared in Shen Qinghan's Sea of Consciousness. It was the completely transformed figure of Ye Yongsheng. But the will belonged to the Night King. Seeing a second life form appear in her Sea of Consciousness besides Lin Zikan, Shen Qinghan was stunned for a moment and then her mind became somewhat muddled. Lin Zikan appearing in her Sea of Consciousness could be barely explained by thoughts in the day bringing dreams at night. But Ye Yongsheng, the traitorous vice-governor appearing in her Sea of Consciousness, baffled her greatly. Could it be that the scenes in the Sea of Consciousness are not just mere illusions? But are they actually real? Is everything Lin Zikan is encountering being projected into my Sea of Consciousness? Or is my Sea of Consciousness inherently a space in the origin land, and both Lin Zi and the traitorous vice-governor just happened to break into this mystical space, which is my Sea of Consciousness? In just the blink of an eye, Shen Qinghan thought through a lot and combined various possibilities, analyzing the reasons behind the sudden appearance of Lin Zikan and the Night King in her Sea of Consciousness. While she was pondering these, the Lin Zikan in her Sea of Consciousness was suddenly pressed down on the head single-handedly by the Night King. Then Lin Zikan's face suddenly filled with a pained expression, his entire face contorting in agony. Seeing this scene, Shen Qinghan immediately became desperate. This is bad. Lin Zi is in danger. Shen Qinghan didn't know what exactly the scene in her Sea of Consciousness was all about. Whether it was real or illusionary. However, none of that mattered. All she knew was that Lin Zikan in the Sea of Consciousness was in danger, and she had to rescue him. She didn't know how to save him and could only, in her urgency, control the Palace of Water God in the Sea of Consciousness to forcefully suppress the Night King. As for possibly harming Lin Zikan, that too was unavoidable. At 130,000 meters deep under the sea, as the Night King's spiritual power kept invading, Lin Zikan felt his brain was about to split open. His memories were continuously being pulled at it, causing him excruciating pain. Contrarily, the Night King, who was harming him, appeared calm and patient at this moment, searching for the memory he wanted. In just the blink of an eye, the Night King found the memory he was looking for. Shen Qinghan. The vessel for the Water God's revival. The Palace of Water God is in her Sea of Consciousness. Isn't the Palace of Water God right in front of me? How can it be in her Sea of Consciousness? System. Son of the Abyss. What are these? As the Night King peered into Lin Zikan's memories, he murmured in a puzzled and confused manner. The content in Lin Zikan's memories was so baffling that even it, who had lived through several epochs, couldn't understand and was utterly confused. As it was murmuring, boom! A sudden urgent sound suddenly rang out. It looked up following the sound and saw the Palace of Water God, which had just been in front of him, suddenly teleport above his head. Then, under his horrified gaze, the entire Palace of Water God came crashing down like Mount Tai pressing on top. Rumble. Following a deafening noise, the massive Palace of Water God, with its terrifying might, came crashing down, imprisoning the evil like the Purgatory Tower, and instantly capturing both the Night King and Lin Zikan. During this, overwhelmed by excruciating pain, Lin Zikan had no idea what was happening. When he opened his eyes again, he found himself in a strange hall emanating a blue glow. The hall was spacious, with only a huge seashell visible. Besides that, there was nothing else. The seashell was about the size of a ping-pong table. Located in the center of the hall, its surface was covered with mysterious ancient runes, emitting a blue glow. What is this place? Why am I here? Where did the Night King go? Linziken observed the surroundings, growing more puzzled the more he looked. Just a moment ago he was having his memories searched by the Night King, his spirit collapsing, in excruciating pain. How in a blink of an eye, did he suddenly appear in such a strange place? Just as he was puzzled. Boom! The seashell in the center of the hall suddenly exploded. Amidst the flying shell fragments, a familiar gigantic figure appeared before him. It was the Night King, who had possessed Ye Yongsheng. At this moment, the Night King, unlike his composed demeanor in the deep sea, was covered in wounds all over his body, looking utterly disheveled. Water God, I didn't mean to offend, please spare me. The Night King hovered over the smashed seashell, looking down at the vortex formed from the shell fragments, his expression both fearful and reverent as he begged for mercy. Despite his sincere choice to submit, the response that came from the vortex was a suction force so powerful it was unimaginable. This terrifying suction force appeared with a clear and precise target to pull him into the vortex. Chapter 522, 300, God's Lair. Night King falls, _2. Water God, spare me. I can help you revive. Water God, my. The last word Lord was halfway uttered when the Night King was suddenly sucked into the vortex without a trace, leaving no sign of movement. Linziken stared at the vortex in the hall, his face showing a hint of daze. Had the Night King, a mythical level creature, truly perished just like that? Is this the palace of the Water God? Does the Water God reside within that vortex? Then, what about the palace of the Water God in Hanhan's Sea of Consciousness? Could there be two palaces of the Water God? In his daze, Linziken's mind was flooded with thoughts, feeling quite surreal about everything that was happening. He had thought that he was going to be possessed by the Night King. But unexpectedly, the palace of the Water God appeared out of nowhere and effortlessly absorbed the Night King, that mythical level expert who seemed invincible, as bizarrely as a grandfather figure emerging from a ring to save the day. Who knows whether the Night King sucked into it is dead or alive? Linziken muttered to himself as he looked at the vortex in the center of the hall. No sooner had he spoken than the tranquil vortex suddenly became violent, with water splashing in all directions. The next second, a massive beast claw extended from it, the claw stretching infinitely, and with iron-slicing ease, it stabbed into the palace's floor. Then, a familiar gigantic figure emerged from the vortex, entering Linziken's vision. It was the Night King, who had just been sucked into the vortex. The Night King was actually able to claw his way out. This was bad. The sight of the Night King's figure made Linziken's heart plummet. However, he quickly snapped out of it, not resigning himself to fate. He immediately unleashed all his chi blood and spirit, dealing both physical and mental blows to the Night King. Yet, his attacks, when landing on the Night King, a mythical level being, were as futile as a mantis trying to stop a chariot, having no effect whatsoever. They did not harm him in the slightest. Escape. Escape was the right choice. Without a moment's hesitation, Linziken quickly scanned the surroundings, looking for a passage to leave the hall. After glancing around, he felt a bit desperate. This hall surprisingly had solid walls on all sides, with no entrance or exit. How could he escape then? There was simply nowhere to run. Just as Linziken was getting frantic inside. Slaw! A crisp tearing sound reached his ears. The Night King inside the vortex was torn to pieces. The mythical level flesh and blood were instantly shredded by the powerful pull of the vortex. The spattering blood dyed the entire azure vortex red. Soon, the blood inside the vortex began to struggle and squirm frantically, attempting to rejuvenate the flesh. Unfortunately, the powerful pull inside the vortex afforded no such opportunity. In just a few seconds, all the blood in the vortex was sucked into its depths, vanishing without a trace. Before long, a vivid crimson bead slowly rose from the vortex and then floated directly toward Linziken, not far away. Linziken watched the approaching crimson bead, sensing a familiar aura from it. It was the unique presence of the Night King. The mythical level Night King, refined into a single bead by the vortex before his very eyes? Why is the bead floating towards me? Is it meant for me? At that thought, Linziken felt somewhat overwhelmed by the honor. After catching the floating bead, he immediately turned towards the center of the hall and respectfully uttered, "Thank you, Water God, for your assistance. Thank you, Water God, for your gift. If there is any way I can be of service to you, Water God, please just say the word, and I will do my utmost." The hall fell into eerie silence. No one responded to Linziken's words. Linziken waited quietly for a moment, and seeing that there were still no responses, he couldn't help but frown slightly. This water god seemed a bit aloof. Not keen on interacting. Linziken thought this to himself. Suddenly, a tremendous suction came from the vortex, instantly absorbing him into it. 1 second. 1 minute. Or perhaps 1 hour. Unsure of how much time had passed, when Linziken next opened his eyes, he found himself unexpectedly hovering steadily above the sea, no longer within the palace of the water god. He looked all around him, and if it weren't for the vivid blood bead in his hand and the throbbing pain in his head from the Night King's invasive memories, he would have thought he had just been dreaming. Just what was that palace of the water god all about? Was it specifically there to save me? Could it have been Han Han's doing? Linziken suddenly thought of Shen King Han, suspecting that everything that had just happened under the sea was being manipulated by Shen King Han from behind the scenes. Shen King Han had an inseparable connection with the water god. If Shen King Han could communicate with the water god, then getting the water god to come over for the rescue might not be such a difficult task after all. Or should he dive back into the depths of the sea to discover the truth? Forget it, better not to stir up trouble when it can be avoided. There's no need to go looking for trouble. With this cautious thought in mind, Linziken's mind moved, and he placed the blood bead he held into his storage space. Then, his figure flashed, transforming into a streak of crimson light, speeding toward city number 1. Shen King Han was still at the city. He needed to hurry back to see how she was doing and if she needed help. Inside city number 1. At a glance, all that met the eye were corpses and ruins, broken walls and shattered towers. The once grand and towering city number 1 now lay in ruins following the battle. In the center of the battlefield, Shen King Han was multitasking, assisting the wounded in recovering their blood, while keeping a close watch on the images in her sea of consciousness, deeply caring about the comfort of Linziken portrayed within them. However, at this moment, the images in the sea of consciousness no longer featured Linziken. There was only a silent palace of the water god, and the boundless sea water rich in origin force. Was it just an unreal illusion after all? Feeling the emptiness of the sea of consciousness, Shen King Han was somewhat taken aback by the recent incident of rescuing Linziken in her sea of consciousness, considering it was most likely a figment of her imagination brought on by her daytime thoughts and nighttime dreams. Linziken decided to head toward city number 36, which led to the southern domain. City number 36 connects to Shanghai City. Worried that they won't be able to hold out, Yuan Dongji had just recovered when he joined the battle. Many people were there. Yuan Dongji, Lu Juanwu, Song Yuan, among others. Yuan Dongji was seriously injured and had not yet fully recovered. In the high skies above the central region, the sounds of battle echoed from time to time. A colossal tree that reached the heavens broke through the clouds. At this moment, outside city number 36, a fierce battle raged on. The feeling that the city was about to fall was palpable. The wood god emerged victorious, plunging everyone into endless despair. Entering the central region, into the ruins, gaining power, evolving wildly. The central region was actually at the very heart of the abyss. The abysses in other domains were extensions of the abyss of the central region. Afterward came the legendary level. Then, the situation turned in an instant, with the Sun-Moon Sacred Lands side routing their enemies, leaving them in disarray. In the end, Sun-Moon Sacred Land emerged victorious from this great battle. The Earthlings completely withdrew from their original position. Shen Qinghan was still trapped in the palace of the Water God, unable to leave. Lin Zikan stood guard alone over the solitary city, protecting Shen Qinghan. City number 1. In the end, with the attributes of Shen Qinghan, Lin Zikan fled with her into the abyss. He discovered it was exactly the same as what he had seen in his dreams. After that, the protagonist used the abyssal monsters to kill either legendary level experts or mythical level experts. With his back to the abyss, he was the master of the abyss. Utilizing abyssal monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused a change in the sky and various phenomena, shocking everyone. The Earth's Great War. Nuclear bombs. The mechanically modified humans appeared. Entering the central region, into the ruins, gaining power, evolving wildly. The central region was actually at the very heart of the abyss. The abysses in other domains were extensions of the abyss of the central region. Afterward came the legendary level. Then, the situation turned in an instant, with the Sun-Moon Sacred Lands side routing their enemies, leaving them in disarray. In the end, Sun-Moon Sacred Land emerged victorious from this great battle. The Earthlings completely withdrew from their original position. Chapter 523, 301. Savior. First City's Skies. When Lin Zikan returned here, the great battle had long since ended, leaving behind only a chaotic scene. At a glance, ruined walls and scattered corpses covered the field. Many somewhat familiar faces from the city had become corpses, forever left on the battlefield. Some met even worse fates, completely annihilated without leaving behind a trace. This is war. Lin Zikan muttered to himself, feeling somewhat disheartened. He surveyed the battlefield from above. Quickly, Lin Zikan dove down at high speed, turning into a streak of light that flashed down, landing precisely in front of Shen Qinghan. Shen Qinghan was helping the wounded to collect blood, and seeing Lin Zikan suddenly appear before her, a smile emerged on her delicate face. Lin Zi, you've finally come back safely, I've been so worried about you. You don't have to worry anymore, all the troubles have been taken care of. Lin Zikan said as he reached out to wipe the dust off Shen Qinghan's face, his movements very gentle. He could have easily used his qi blood or spiritual power to wipe the dust from Shen Qinghan's face from afar. While it would have been convenient, it lacked a sense of intimacy. More than convenience, he preferred to touch Shen Qinghan's delicate face with his hands, feeling the warmth from her skin. What happened to that traitorous deputy city lord? Why did you come back alone? What about the others? Shen Qinghan asked 3 questions in succession, her face full of curiosity. She had always been like this since childhood, eager to ask Lin Zikan anything she didn't understand, using him like a search engine on her phone. To these 3 questions, Lin Zikan answered patiently in a mild voice. The traitorous deputy city lord is dead. But it wasn't me who killed him. He was possessed by a mythical level expert called the Night King. Those city leaders who went with me to deal with the traitorous deputy city lord were unfortunately all sacrificed, dying at the hands of the deputy city lord before he was possessed. As he responded to these questions, Lin Zikan's voice was calm, so calm that he did not seem like a participant but rather a disinterested bystander. He purposely made these matters sound trivial, not wanting to concern Shen Qinghan. However, Shen Qinghan was not naive, and she was well aware of how perilous the situations Lin Zikan had described must have been. After all, those city leaders who had gone to pursue Ye Yongsheng had a biological level at the very least of legendary level. Yet such high-level city leaders had all sacrificed their lives without exception. From this alone, one could judge how dangerous Lin Zikin's previous experiences had been. Not to mention that the traitorous deputy city lord had been possessed by a mythical level expert. With a mythical level expert making an appearance, one could only imagine how dire the situation must have been then. Though she understood the gravity of the situation, Shen Qinghan did not press for more details. Instead, she asked Lin Zikin. Lin Zi, what do we plan to do after cleaning up the battlefield? With wars breaking out everywhere in the origin land, no place was safe, leaving Shen Qinghan somewhat at a loss. Lin Zikin did not rush to answer, silently scanning the surrounding environment. After a brief silence, he said to Shen Qinghan, go to other cities to help clear out the alien races. The alien races in First City had been almost completely wiped out, there weren't many resources left to consume. If he wanted to continue evolving at high speed, it was time to change battlefields. Hearing Lin Zikin's plan to go to other cities and help clear out the alien races, many nearby people showed their respect, looking at him with admiration. These people did not know that Lin Zikin's main reason for helping other cities to clear out the alien races was to consume the life origin and origin force of those alien races. They thought that Lin Zikin could not bear to see his people suffer and wanted to offer his light and warmth. However, a gentleman's deeds ought to be judged by their benefits, not the motives behind them. No matter the purpose or the real thoughts, as long as the actions benefited the people, he was regarded as the savior of his people. Shen Qinghan, knowing Lin Zikin wanted to kill alien races to consume and evolve, sensibly said, "Okay, got it. I'll speed up the cleanup, so we can move to the other cities to clear out the alien races as soon as possible." After speaking, she quickly went to assist in recovering blood for the wounded. With nothing else to do, Lin Zikin joined in the effort to treat the wounded, spreading his spiritual power to cover the entire battlefield, searching for undiscovered injured among the ruins. With his and Shen Qinghan's assistance, the wounded on the battlefield were quickly provided with the most basic treatment. After doing all this, Shen Qinghan remembered something, walked up to Lin Zikin, took his hand, and spoke to him through Qi blood. "By the way, Lin Zi, not too long ago, I encountered something quite magical." "What is it?" Lin Zikin asked back with curiosity, using Qi blood to communicate. "Shen Qinghan, not too long ago, I saw you in my sea of consciousness, saw you descending deeper and deeper within it, and then being chased by the traitorous deputy city lord." Hearing this, Lin Zikin's pupils constricted, his eyes widened, and a look of astonishment spread across his face. What does it mean? Could it be that the sea I dived into earlier was actually Han Han's sea of consciousness? That's why I encountered the palace of the water god there? An entire boundless ocean was Han Han's sea of consciousness. Am I dreaming? Lin Zikin felt this was too exaggerated, and his astonishment gradually turned to disbelief. Across from him, Shen Qinghan saw all the changes in Lin Zikin's expression and became increasingly astonished herself. Chapter 524, 301. Savior_2. Lin Zikin's changing expressions alerted her to something. The images she had seen in her sea of consciousness not long ago were not projections, not false illusions, but real images. But how could that be? How could Lin Zi appear in my sea of consciousness? Isn't the sea of consciousness an abstract existence? Isn't it the embodiment of the strength of will? Where did the entity come from? At this moment, Shen Qinghan felt her brain was somewhat inadequate, utterly unable to comprehend the situation. Lin Zikin on the other side was just as confused, completely baffled. This was too outrageous, far exceeding both of their understandings. After steadying her emotions slightly, Lin Zikin looked at Shen Qinghan with a serious tone to confirm. "You saw afterward, didn't you, that both the traitorous deputy city lord and I were sucked into the palace of water god, then the traitor was drawn into a whirlpool and perished, his corpse even forged into a crimson bead." "Yes, yes, yes. Just like that." Shen Qinghan nodded vigorously like a pecking chicken, her expression growing increasingly shocked. If she was still not entirely sure that the images she had seen in her mind before were real, now she could be 100% certain they were. What Linziken had described matched exactly what she saw in her sea of consciousness, without the slightest discrepancy. Seeing her nod repeatedly in agreement, Linziken's heart too was swept by a surge of astonishment. It was really true. The ocean I previously infiltrated was actually Han-Han's sea of consciousness. Wait. That's not right. If that ocean was really Han-Han's sea of consciousness, then logically, Han-Han should be able to see the creatures living in the sea all the time. Could it be Han-Han's sea of consciousness is not an entire ocean, but her sea of consciousness is partially connected to that boundless ocean? The reason I suddenly appeared in her sea of consciousness was just because I passed through some hidden connection point while diving in that ocean, and accidentally entered Han-Han's sea of consciousness? Still not right. There are so many creatures living in that ocean, if there was a special connection point, plenty of creatures should have already entered Han-Han's sea of consciousness. It seems I have to return to that ocean and spread out my spiritual power to cover it, to see if I can find the so-called connection point. These thoughts crossed Linziken's mind. To the side, Shen King Han, both curious and puzzled, asked, "Linzi, why did you suddenly appear in my sea of consciousness? It's so mystical." This question was hard for Linziken to answer. The only thing he could do was share his speculations with Shen King Han. After Shen King Han heard his theory, she thought for a moment, then offered a guess, "Linzi, could it be the water god's doing? Does the water god know you are very important to me and deliberately intervene to help save you? Think about it, when we were in danger in the coastal forest before, there was also a mysterious unknown force that saved us, and I feel it was the intervention of the water god." Shen King Han's conjecture sounded plausible and well-founded. Linziken listened and fell into a bout of contemplation. The water god, perhaps. Thinking this, Linziken's thoughts shifted and he took out a crimson bead from the storage space. This bead was the same one that had been expelled from the whirlpool of the palace of Water God, forged from the corpse of Ye Yongsheng and the will of the Night King. Just by holding it in his hand, he could clearly sense the strong vitality emanating from within the bead. It was the vitality of a mythical level. This is the bead forged from the body of the traitorous deputy city lord and the will of the Night King. It contains a wealth of vitality, which is greatly beneficial to evolution. See if you can absorb it. As he spoke, Linziken passed the bead to Shen King Han. Shen King Han, looking at the bead handed to her, asked with clear, bright eyes, "Aren't you going to absorb it? This bead was taken from the palace of Water God, it belongs to you. Let's split it between us then." "No need, you absorb it yourself, it belongs to you alone, your own evolution resources." Linziken was very much in need of evolution resources, but no matter how much he needed them, he wouldn't covet Shen King Han's share. Shen King Han knew Linziken's character well. Seeing that Linziken had declined, she didn't urge him anymore and decided to absorb the bead on her own. She didn't know how to absorb the bead and, when taking it from Linziken, planned to study it first. However, before she could start examining it, the crimson bead in her hand suddenly transformed into a stream of intertwined red and blue light, instantly surging into her heaven's gate. Then, the chi blood strength and spiritual strength inside her began to climb step by step, at an unbelievably astonishing speed soaring upwards. In just the blink of an eye, her biological level evolved to legendary level 1, triggering a phenomenon between heaven and earth. The previously clear sky suddenly began to pour rain despite the scorching sun. Simultaneously, the tranquil earth saw countless underground waters burst forth, shooting into the sky, merging with the falling rainwater, forming various shapes of aquatic creatures that spread across the entire sky. At this moment, everyone present couldn't help but look up at the sky together, stunned by the strange phenomenon appearing above them. They had lived for so long but had never seen such a spectacular sight. Linziken, just like everyone else, was now looking up at the phenomenon in the sky, feeling a surge of amazement in his heart. The phenomenon caused by Shen Qinghan's evolution into a legendary level creature was too magnificent, far more so than when he had evolved into a legendary level creature, not even in the same league of grandeur. Lin Zikin observed carefully the diverse aquatic life formed from the rainwater above and found them all familiar. Having seen them on the murals in the underwater ruins. Among them, he unexpectedly saw the figure of the sea god. The sea god, formed from the rainwater in the sky, looked exactly as it did in the murals, like a guard with no presence at all. Perhaps, Han Han is not just a vessel for the revival of the water god, but she herself is the water god. Lin Zikin watched the phenomenon in the sky quietly, a thought like this emerging in his mind. Legendary level 1. Now only one level below Lin Zikin. This shouldn't be a coincidence anymore. The two didn't stay on the battlefield for long. They quickly rose from the ground and took off, heading towards other Earth cities. Which city shall we head to? Shen Qinghan turned to look at Lin Zikin beside her and asked softly. Lin Zikin already had a destination in mind and said indifferently, let's go to City 36 first, it leads to Shanghai City, we need to deal with the alien races there first. With family in Shanghai City, he had to prioritize clearing the alien races there. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease. Always worrying that City 36 would be breached, allowing a large number of alien races to enter Shanghai City through the biological channel and massacre in Shanghai City. Upon hearing Lin Zikin, Shen Qinghan became anxious all of a sudden and said, let's hurry over there then. Lin Zikin said, no need to rush, I can sense City 36 from here, it's safe for now. Luo Qingxiu also wanted to go to Shanghai City to see Yuan Dongji. She knew that Yuan Dongji would definitely be in City 36. Lin Zikin said, when I went back to Earth before, I learned that Principal Yuan was injured, she might not be there. But Luo Qingxiu still insisted on going. Lin Zikin chose City 36, leading to the southern domain. On the way there, the central region was still engaged in a big battle. The noise was tremendous. City 36, connecting Shanghai City. Worried that it couldn't hold up. Yuan Dongji had just recovered and joined the battle. Many were there. Yuan Dongji, Lu Chuanwu, Song Yuan, and others. Yuan Dongji was seriously injured and not yet fully healed. From the high heavens above the central region, the noises from the battle echoed from time to time. A giant tree piercing the heavens broke through the clouds. At this moment, outside City 36, a fierce battle. The feeling that the city might be breached lingered. Lin Zikin made his entrance, commanding the wild tides. After that, the wood god won, and everyone fell into an endless despair. All back to Earth to defend to the death. Earth had domain power suppression. Easier to defend. P.S. Holding out my bowl, asking for monthly pass and recommendation votes. Chapter 525, 302. Suppress alien races with one's own power. Central Region. The mythical level battle was still ongoing, but its intensity had gradually subsided. Almost a third of the territory had been affected by the battle. At a glance, the sky and earth were torn apart, and corpses were strewn everywhere. The creatures within the range of the battle had not been spared, all had turned into debris on the ground. Central Region was the origin of a large number of relics, a life-forbidden zone comparable to the Abyss, where only extremely powerful beings could survive, starting at the epic level. Yet, such powerful creatures had no time to escape in this mythical level conflict and fell on the spot. We can't keep this up, or we'll all fall in the Central Region. Lord of Green Hill's ancient mountain, Sumai Xiao, suspended in the air, gasped for breath, her chest heaving non-stop. Her chi blood, spirit, and origin force were almost depleted, greatly reducing her combat strength. The situation was similarly dire for the sea god, Elder Li, Sima Xian, and Xian Yuan Wanyu surrounding her. Each had a tired look on their face, their combat strength less than 2/3 of their peak. Only Qi Qingmo, clad in a Taoist robe, still had abundant chi blood, with no reduction in combat strength. Opposite them, Lord of Silence, Elder Tree, and Flower God, these three mythical level experts, continuously revitalized by Wood God's endless supply of life force, were always at their peak condition. Despite fighting 6 against 3, they constantly suppressed Qi King Mo and the others. The Wood God represented perpetual life, able to endlessly supply vitality to a target creature, allowing it to operate at full capacity without worrying about physical exhaustion. However, the Wood God's own combat strength was not much higher than that of other mythical level experts from Origin Land, mainly serving a supportive role to apply various life-enhancing states to his allies. Find a chance to break through and get out, there's no need to stay here and consume ourselves. Xian Yuan Wanyu, her face slightly pale and panting heavily like Sumai Xiao, spoke in a weak voice. Of all the present mythical level experts, her depletion was the greatest, nearly exhausted and unable to continue fighting. Hearing her, others unanimously agreed with the decision to retreat. The Wood God is the god of life. As long as he is present, the side he is on will never perish. With his supply of vitality, a target creature could instantly resurrect even if its soul were obliterated, making it impossible to kill. Unless one could target the leader first and deal with the Wood God. However, the resilience of the Wood God's life was not something a mythical level creature could handle. Only a being higher than a mythical level creature could completely extinguish the Wood God's vitality. But such a being, higher than a mythical level creature, only existed in the hypotheticals of mythical level creatures and had never been confirmed. As Qi King Mo's group was preparing to find an opportunity to withdraw from the battlefield, suddenly, a massive supernatural phenomenon erupted in the southern domain. Numerous high-ranking aquatic creatures appeared in the sky above the southern domain, in solidified water form. Following this, these powerful beings all knelt in one direction, their faces full of awe, worshipping a mysterious woman lying on a seashell. In the central region, all the mythical level experts present immediately noticed the supernatural phenomenon above the southern domain. For a moment, all were stunned, overwhelmed by the scale of the phenomenon. As beings who had evolved into mythical level creatures and existed in this world for a long time, they had witnessed various supernatural phenomena caused by the evolution of creatures. However, this massive scale phenomenon now appearing in the sky above the southern domain was something they had never encountered before. What's happening in the southern domain? Why would such an exaggerated phenomenon suddenly erupt? Has a new mythical level creature been born? It shouldn't be. I didn't sense any mythical level creatures there. I checked just now, it seems a creature evolved to the legendary level, triggering this supernatural phenomenon. With such a large-scale phenomenon, just because a creature evolved to legendary level. How is that possible? Sumai Xiao, Elder Li, Sima Xian, and Xian Yuan Wanyu, these four mythical level experts, looked at the phenomenon above the southern domain, continuously exchanging thoughts, their faces filled with confusion and disbelief. Qi King Mo remained silent, her brows slightly furrowed, staring intently at the phenomenon in the southern domain. She sensed a very familiar aura within that phenomenon. It was Shen Qinghan's aura. Did that gentle, weak girl evolve into a legendary level creature? Qi King Mo murmured in her heart, just for evolving into a legendary level creature, why would it trigger such a huge-scale natural phenomenon? As Qi King Mo pondered this, nearby, the sea god's entire face filled with fear. What's going on? Why would the water god still be able to appear? This is impossible. As the sea god trembled uncontrollably in fear. Opposite them, materializing as a towering sky-reaching tree, the not yet fully revived wood god felt a slight fluctuation of will upon sensing traces of the water god's aura. The water god is also resurrecting. Then, his massive body emitted a lush green light, illuminating the entire central region. In that moment when the green light shone, the ground of the central region, known as the Life Forbidden Zone, suddenly sprouted countless fresh green shoots. These sprouts appeared and grew visibly robust in just the blink of an eye. In just a moment, the originally barren central region transformed into a lush forest brimming with vitality, completely becoming the domain of the wood god. In a corner of city number 1. Chapter 526, 302. Suppress alien races with one's own power _2. Having successfully evolved to legendary level 1, Shen Qinghan, whose body had undergone a transformation, could no longer suppress the joy in her heart, and her delicate face suddenly filled with a smile. Lin Zikan, I've succeeded in evolving too, just like you, I am a legendary level creature now. Being able to keep up with Lin Zikan's pace on the path of evolution was Shen Qinghan's greatest joy at this stage. Seeing that Shen Qinghan's face was full of smiles, Lin Zikan was also infected and smiled along. In the future, we will continue to advance side by side just like now. Definitely. Shen Qinghan confidently said. Having just finished speaking, she slightly furrowed her brows, somewhat puzzled, and said, "It's so strange, Lindsay, why is my biological level always just one level behind yours?" Her biological level was now legendary level 1, while Lin Zikan's was legendary level 2. After all the twists and turns, the level difference had returned to just one level apart, which baffled her. Once or twice could be all right, but every time, it couldn't merely be explained as a coincidence. It might be a coincidence, Lin Zikan said calmly. In fact, he also felt it wasn't a coincidence, but as there was no way to study such matter, he could only temporarily treat it as a coincidence. Let's go, let's head to other cities. Seeing that it was about time, Lin Zikan felt it was time to leave and mentioned this to Shen Qinghan. Shen Qinghan agreed, and then both of them took off from the ground together, aiming to fly to other Earth cities. Which city shall we visit? Shen Qinghan turned her head to look at Lin Zikan beside her and asked in a gentle voice. Lin Zikan already had a destination in mind and said lightly, "Let's start with city number 36, which leads to Shanghai City. First, let's solve the alien races there." His family was in Shanghai City, he must prioritize clearing the alien races there. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease. He constantly worried that city number 36 would be breached, and a large number of alien races would enter Shanghai City through the biological passageway, wreaking havoc in Shanghai City. Hearing Lin Zikan say this, Shen Qinghan also became concerned. Even the strongest city number 1 was breached, so the situation in the other cities was probably not good by now. Even if they hadn't been breached, they were likely deep in dire straits. Thinking about this, Shen Qinghan immediately urged anxiously, "Then let's hurry, hoping that city number 36 has not yet been breached." "Yes, let's set off now." Having said that, Lin Zikan reached out and encircled Shen Qinghan's waist, intending to carry her as he flew to city number 36. His flying speed far exceeded that of Shen Qinghan, carrying her would allow them to arrive faster. Just as the two were about to turn into a stream of crimson light flying towards city number 36. "Wait a moment." A cold voice came from below. Lin Zikan looked downwards at the sound, and what met his eyes was Luo Qingxu with disheveled hair flying upward. "What is it?" When Luo Qingxu reached the same altitude, Lin Zikan looked at her calmly and asked. The tone of his voice was somewhat cold, the attitude reserved for strangers. Although he and Luo Qingxu had a short friendship back in the 2nd grade of elementary school, he didn't consider this brief relationship to be significant. That short period of friendship had happened solely because he pitted Luo Qingxu on behalf of Shen Qinghan. Otherwise, why waste so much time making friends when he could spend that time doing more push-ups to train his body? "I want to visit my master in city number 36, could you please take me along?" Luo Qingxu's voice was as cold as usual. She wasn't intentionally being cold, it was just a habit formed over many years, and she couldn't change it easily. "Then let's go together." Lin Zikan's voice remained calm. Bringing Luo Qingxu along on the way wouldn't cost him anything, why not? "Thank you." Luo Qingxu said these two words a bit awkwardly. She had been in city number 1 for over 10 years, rarely using these words, making them feel unfamiliar when spoken. Suddenly thinking of an issue, Lin Zikan reminded Luo Kyungsu, I went back to Earth before and learned that Principal Yuan is injured and unconscious in bed, so she might still be on Earth, not in the area of city number 36. Yes, I know. Luo Kyungsu responded with a slightly colder tone. Whether Yuan Dongji was there or not, she would still go to have a look. Since city number 1 was also destroyed, staying there no longer made any sense. If Yuan Dongji wasn't in city number 36, she would stay there to help defend the city, vowing to protect the biological passageway there. She did not want the alien races from Origin Land to turn Shanghai City, where her master was, into ruins. Then let's depart now. Lin Zikan said this indifferently. As soon as the words fell, he skillfully drew Luo Kyungsu toward him, one hand encircling her slender waist, then both the chi blood and spiritual power within him erupted simultaneously, instantly transforming into a streak of light that flew towards city number 36. In the high sky en route to city number 36. A fiery red streak of light, so fast that it tore open countless rifts in the void, covered 10,000 miles in just the blink of an eye. Within the streak of light, Luo Kyungsu, still only at the high level of biological level, could not even open her eyes due to the strong pressure of the surrounding airflows, experiencing nothing but darkness throughout the journey. Similarly, her hearing was lost amid the tremendous sounds of air tearing, almost unable to hear anything. Lin Zikan was moving too fast, so fast that she, with merely a high biological level, couldn't withstand it. It wasn't just her, even Shen Qinghan, whose biological level was only one level below Lin Zikan, was also nearly losing both her vision and hearing amidst Lin Zikan's high-speed sprint. It wasn't that the two of them were too weak, but that Lin Zikan was simply too strong. Lin Zikan knew both were suffering, but he did not slow down. Suffering was the smallest price to pay. As long as they weren't injured and their bodies were intact, any discomfort was no big deal. Boom! 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 Suddenly, several terrifying explosions echoed from the skies above the central region. When the explosions occurred, the entire central region burst into flames and thunder roared, giving the impression of an apocalyptic world, which filled those who saw it with despair. Following the sound, Lin Zikan glanced at the commotion of the mythical level battle in the central region, felt the formidable power released by the mythical level experts clashing, and couldn't help but frown slightly. Without a moment's hesitation, he immediately pushed his chi blood and spiritual power to their limit, flying at the highest speed towards the location of city number 36. The energy released by the mythical level experts in battle was too formidable, far beyond what he, a mere legendary level creature, could resist. To secure even a slim chance of survival from the hands of mythical level experts, he had to devour as many alien races for evolution as possible. The area in front of the gate of city number 36. Battles raged on, filled with continuous roars. Under the leadership of several beast kings, a large number of alien races stormed the gates in groups, creating deafening collision noises. Facing the attack of the alien races, the leaders in the city did not sit idly by, all came out to meet the battle head-on. Above the city, Yuan Dongji furiously unleashed her spiritual power, controlling a 100-meter-long water dragon that blotted out the sun and rampaged over the battlefield on the ground, tasked with clearing up the weaker foes. Seeing her recklessly unleash spiritual power, Lu Chuanyu immediately shouted from atop the high walls of the gate. Dongji, you've only just recovered, don't push yourself so hard. Yuan Dongji ignored Lu Chuanyu's shout and continued to burst forth with spiritual power, controlling the water dragon to help the stronger ones clear out the riffraff, making herself useful. On the way there, the great battle continued in the central region. The noise was tremendous. City number 36, linked to Shanghai City. Worried they couldn't withstand it. Yuan Dongji had just recovered and had come to join the battle. Many people were there. Yuan Dongji, Lu Chuanyu, Song Yuan, and others. Yuan Dongji was severely injured and had not yet fully healed. From time to time, the sky above the central region echoed with the commotion of the great battle. A gargantuan tree reaching towards the heavens, breaking through the clouds. At this moment, outside city number 36, a great battle felt like the city was about to be breached. Lin Zikan entered the fray, grasping the tides of chaos. Afterward, the wood god won, plunging everyone into endless despair. All personnel returned to Earth to hold the fort. Earth has domain power to suppress. Easier to defend. P.S. Putting my bowl out, seeking monthly pass and recommendations. Chapter 527, 303, 10 km Mighty Dragon. Shocking everyone. 36th City. In the sky above the city, several legendary level experts were clashing. It was a 3 against 2. 3 legendary level leaders of the city were fighting against 2 legendary level beast kings. Although the city leaders outnumbered their foes, their individual powers were vastly inferior, leaving them completely suppressed throughout the battle. Below, in the area in front of the city gates, this was the battlefield of high-level creatures, rare creatures, and epic-level creatures. Epic-level creatures were restraining each other, having drawn away from the center of the battlefield. The grand battle in front of the city gates was mainly dominated by rare creatures. As for high-level creatures, they were almost cannon fodder. But they had the advantage in numbers, and occasionally one could see a rare creature overwhelmed by a swarm of high-level creatures. Buzz! On the empty land 10,000 meters away from the city gates, a pale blue 100-meter-long water dragon rampaged, leaving behind alien races wailing in its path and a ground strewn with corpses and debris. About 10 minutes later, this water dragon suddenly scattered into droplets falling all over the ground. No good, my injuries haven't healed, I can't control the dragon for long. In the sky above the battlefield, Yuan Dongji uttered these words with a pale face and a weak voice, as she looked down at the water stains on the ground. As she spoke, she raised her jade hand, and a deep blue elixir suddenly appeared in her palm. This was an elixir that could help recover spiritual power. Yuan Dongji parted her rosy lips, and the deep blue pill melted as soon as it entered her mouth, turning into streams of cool relief, quickly moisturizing her swollen and throbbing brain. In just the blink of an eye, she felt the swelling in her brain ease considerably. In 1 or 2 more minutes, she'd be able to control the dragon and fight once again. Buzz! Suddenly, a piercing whooshing sound erupted. Before Yuan Dongji could react, a bone spike infused with dense origin force shot up from below with a speed her spirit could scarcely track. Pfft! A sound of flesh and bone being pierced rang out. A bone spike shot through Yuan Dongji's chest, and a large amount of blood sprayed out, turning into a hazy blood mist under the evaporation of the origin force. Pfft! 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 Almost at the same time, several similar sounds of rupture resounded. Yuan Dongji's limbs and head were pierced directly through by other bone spikes that shot towards her at breakneck speed, creating shockingly large bloody holes. Her right arm was even shot off, nearly turned into blood mist by the immense impact of the bone spike, spreading through the air in an instant. In just a moment, Yuan Dongji, who had been suspended high in the air, was now critically injured and plummeting freely, leaving behind a prominent and elongated trail of blood in the sky. On the ground, Lu Chuanwu was making use of his powerful body to push back a rare level 1 fire tiger beast in front of the Shanghai University Student Union members, sending it into a continuous retreat. Just as he saw victory within reach and felt a surge of excitement, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of Yuan Dongji falling rapidly from the sky. In that instant, he was momentarily stunned. And it was this brief lapse that exposed his weakness and allowed the fire tiger beast to counterattack, slamming into him and sending him flying with a high-temperature flame ignited on his chest. Once ignited, the flames spread over his body instantaneously, furiously burning his flesh and blood. Regaining his senses, he spit out blood while rapidly rolling on the ground trying to extinguish the flames that had caught on him. Unfortunately, he hadn't rolled far. The next second. Buzz! The fire tiger beast, seizing the opportunity of his vulnerability, turned into a flaming arrow and rapidly pounced towards him. It's over. Lu Chuanyu's face changed slightly. Just when he thought he was about to die at the jaws of the beast. Boom! A huge surge of groundwater suddenly broke through the earth and instantly transformed into a 100-meter-long water dragon, swallowing the fire tiger beast in one bite. Under the compression of the dragon's belly, the flames on the fire tiger beast were extinguished in a moment, reduced to nothingness, before its body exploded with a loud bang, turning into a vast spread of blood reddening the water dragon. Then, with a splash, cold groundwater, like a heavy downpour, fell on Lu Chuanyu, instantly putting out the flames burning on him. It was Yuan Dongji, who had fallen heavily to the ground, that had acted. Bearing a barely alive body, she forcibly used the last of her spiritual power to control the 100-meter water dragon from thousands of meters away to save Lu Chuanyu. Lu Chuanyu knew it was Yuan Dongji who had saved him. The moment the flames were extinguished, disregarding the severe pain from the burns, he immediately got up from the ground and rushed towards Yuan Dongji. In less than 10 seconds, he arrived at the side of the critically injured Yuan Dongji and knelt down anxiously, asking, "Dongji, are you okay?" "I won't die," Yuan Dongji said faintly, "but you, don't get distracted on the battlefield, not every time will someone be able to save you in time." "I know, I'll be more careful next time." Lu Chuanyu responded and immediately exerted his blood qi power, transferring his own power of qi blood to Yuan Dongji. This was a unique technique of the pure blood human path, allowing one to transfer one's own power of qi blood to the target creature for self-repair. "Principal, is Principal Yuan okay?" Song Yuan ran over from the front, asking worriedly. Yuan Dongji coolly replied, "I'm fine, you don't have to come over to check on me. Hurry back to your position and resist the alien races." "Good, then I'm going back." Without lingering too long, Song Yuan turned around intending to return to her original position. But just as she turned and had not gone far, a thunderous collision suddenly resounded from above in the sky. Chapter 528, 303, 10,000 meter giant dragon. Shocked the whole audience. _2. With a dazzling light flashing, 3 figures swiftly plummeted from the sky. Song Yuan looked up and realized in horror that they were the 3 legendary leaders of the city. At this moment, the life force within them had vanished, and they had completely lost consciousness, rapidly falling to the ground as mere corpses. They had all been killed by 2 beast kings, forever remaining on this battlefield. The city lord has lost the battle. Song Yuan, gazing at the 3 swiftly descending corpses, saw her mature, pretty face suddenly filled with despair. With the defeat of the most powerful fighters on the battlefield, it meant the entire battle was lost. It also meant that city number 36 was about to be breached, and Shanghai City was about to be invaded by the creatures from the origin land. At that moment, Song Yuan wasn't the only one feeling despair. Everyone present had a death-like pallor, their eyes filled with hopelessness. No matter how advantageous the ground battle seemed, once the top forces in the sky were defeated, the entire battlefield would collapse. Humanity in the end couldn't withstand the alien races, Earth is doomed. Lu Chuanyu, while transferring blood qi power to Yuan Dongji, muttered without any fighting spirit. Before evolving into a high-level creature, he had never entered the origin land to confront alien races and had no real concept of it. Rare-level fighters, in his eyes, appeared almost invincible. After descending into the origin land, he realized that the rare-level fighters, whom he thought invincible, were just slightly superior ants, liable to be crushed any moment by even higher-level creatures. Only when a creature's biological level evolved to epic could it be called strong. And to dominate the battlefield, one must at least be of legendary level. Now, the 3 legendary level experts, capable of dominating the battlefield from Earth's side, had all turned into lifeless, cold corpses, and everything was over. Hearing Lu Juanmu's words, a murderous look flashed across Yuan Dongji's eyes. What does it matter if we can't defeat them, or if Earth is doomed? At least before we die, we should drag a few damned alien races along with us. With that said, she pushed away Lu Juanmu, who was transferring blood chi power to her, and her spirit power burst forth as she soared into the sky. Then, regardless of her own safety, she overexerted herself to manipulate a massive amount of groundwater to burst through the earth and form a giant 100-meter-long water dragon. This 100-meter-long water dragon, considerably longer than any she had formed before, stretched over 300 meters. Once it appeared, it instantly drew the attention of all creatures present, especially from the alien races. Hum. 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 Just as Yuan Dongji soared into the sky and formed a 300-meter-long water dragon, a series of sharp breaking sounds suddenly erupted. From the direction of the sounds, several bone spikes loaded with dense origin force were flying at high speed. This time, prepared, Yuan Dongji was not hit by these incoming bone spikes. As the bone spikes approached, she controlled the water dragon to shield her entire body, blocking all of the incoming spikes from reaching her. Immediately afterward, she pinpointed the direction from which the bone spikes came and located a spine-covered exotic beast on the ground. Found you! With that, Yuan Dongji's eyes narrowed, and she unleashed the full extent of her spiritual power, commanding the 300-meter-long water dragon to dive toward the ground, aiming at the exotic beast that liked sneaking attacks. In just a few seconds, a thunderous boom resounded. The ground creature of rare second-order biological level, directly slammed by the 300-meter-long water dragon, burst into a pool of blood, completely falling on the battlefield. Ha! Just an ant that only knows how to shoot from the shadows, utterly incapable head-on. Yuan Dongji, looking down disdainfully at the pool of blood on the ground below, her eyes filled with scorn. Having finished speaking, she wasted no time and immediately directed the water dragon to charge at other alien races, intending to kill as many of them as possible with her limited life, trying to make full use of her dying energy. Boom! Suddenly, a loud explosion was heard. Just as Yuan Dongji controlled the 300-meter-long dragon to make a charging move, in the next second, the giant head was destroyed by a powerful burst of energy, turning into a widespread shower of water that rained down relentlessly onto the ground. An ant, huh? Aren't you just an ant as well? A deep, hoarse voice unexpectedly rang out from behind Yuan Dongji. The moment she heard the voice, Yuan Dongji immediately erupted with spiritual power and flew backward, increasing the distance from the direction of the voice. At the same time, the legendary level war in the sky had also been lost. Then, it affected the battlefield below. The situation on the ground also became disadvantageous. Many familiar people couldn't withstand it. A university classmate. And that group of 4 close friends. Yuan Dongji couldn't hold on. Then, a 10,000-meter-long water dragon approached. It was Shen Qinghan. Shocking! Lin Zikan made his entrance, taking charge of the wild surge. Later, the wood god won, plunging everyone into unending despair. All returned to Earth to hold their ground. Earth had domain power restriction. Easier to defend. Entering the central region, venturing into relics, gaining power, evolving wildly. The central region, actually, was the very center of the abyss. The abysses in other regions were all extensions spreading out from the central region abyss. Then, legendary level. Later on, the situation abruptly turned around, blasted into disarray by the Sun-Moon Sacred Land. Eventually, in this grand battle, the side of the Sun-Moon Sacred Land triumphed grandly. The Earthlings entirely retreated from the original spot. Because Shen Qinghan was still trapped within the Palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan alone guarded the isolated city, protecting Shen Qinghan. City number 1. Ultimately, with Shen Qinghan as a follower, Lin Zikan took her and escaped into the abyss. The scene they discovered was exactly like what was in his dream. Later, the male lead used the abyss monsters to kill legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, became the abyss master. Using the abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the sky and earth to change colors, various phenomena occurring, astonishing everyone. Earth's Great Battle. Nuclear bombs. Mechanically modified humans appeared. Entering the central region, venturing into relics, gaining power, evolving wildly. The central region, actually, was the very center of the abyss. The abysses in other regions were all extensions spreading out from the central region abyss. Then, legendary level. Later on, the situation abruptly turned around, blasted into disarray by the Sun-Moon Sacred Land. Eventually, in this grand battle, the side of the Sun-Moon Sacred Land triumphed grandly. The Earthlings entirely retreated from the original spot. Because Shen Qinghan was still trapped within the Palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan alone guarded the isolated city, protecting Shen Qinghan. City number 1. Ultimately, with Shen Qinghan as a follower, Lin Zikan took her and escaped into the abyss. The scene they discovered was exactly like what was in his dream. Later, the male lead used the abyss monsters to kill legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, became the abyss master. Using the abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the sky and earth to change colors, various phenomena occurring, astonishing everyone. Attacking Earth. Descriptions of mechanically modified humans, descriptions of nuclear bombs. P.S. I'm pleading, seek monthly pass and recommendation ticket. Because Shen Qinghan was still trapped within the Palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan alone guarded the isolated city, protecting Shen Qinghan. City number 1. Ultimately, with Shen Qinghan as a follower, Lin Zikan took her and escaped into the abyss. The scene they discovered was exactly like what was in his dream. Later, the male lead used the abyss monsters to kill legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, became the abyss master. Using the abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the sky and earth to change colors, various phenomena occurring, astonishing everyone. Attacking Earth. Descriptions of mechanically modified humans, descriptions of nuclear bombs. City number 1. Ultimately, with Shen Qinghan as a follower, Lin Zikan took her and escaped into the abyss. The scene they discovered was exactly like what was in his dream. Later, the male lead used the abyss monsters to kill legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, became the abyss master. Using the abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the sky and earth to change colors, various phenomena occurring, astonishing everyone. Attacking Earth. Descriptions of mechanically modified humans, descriptions of nuclear bombs. Chapter 529, 304, 10,000 meters Water Dragon takes flight. Dark clouds crowded the sky, filled with constantly flashing arcs of electricity that enshrouded the area below in a shadow of despair that made all living things hopeless. A man wreathed in dark aura hovered above the shadow. Accompanied by bursts of thunder and lightning, the man looked down from on high at Yuan Dongji below, his gaze towards Yuan Dongji as if looking at an ant, full of disdain. Under the oppression of the powerful aura emanating from the man, Yuan Dongji found it difficult to breathe. A fine sweat beading on her forehead and back, her body trembling uncontrollably. Although Yuan Dongji was a famous female powerhouse on Earth, with a high status, revered by others, her biological level was only third-order rare. To an epic-level expert, a creature of this level was no different from an ant. If I'm not mistaken, you and that burnt old man below should be mates. The man said in a dead and somber voice before he added, if you kill him with your own hands, I'll spare your life and let you be my bed slave. This epic-level alien who came from the land of oblivion had his eyes on Yuan Dongji's body, which was alluring to the point of being somewhat indecent, and planned to bring her back to the land of oblivion for thorough training. Hearing these words, a flash of revulsion passed fleetingly through Yuan Dongji's eyes. Then, without any hesitation, she immediately unleashed her spiritual power at its maximum limit and dove at the fastest speed towards Lu Juanyu below. Seeing this, a glint of anticipation could not help but surface in the man's eyes. A woman forced to kill her own partner for survival, then submitting to her enemy to cling to life. This scene was his favorite kind of drama to watch. Every time he personally witnessed such a plot, it excited him to the peak of arousal. Buzz! With a flurry of whooshing sounds, Yuan Dongji quickly reached Lu Juanyu in the blink of an eye, under the man's watchful gaze. Then, under the man's expectant eyes, she reached out to grab Lu Juanyu and fled at the highest speed with him in tow. She might not be able to defeat the man, but that didn't necessarily mean she couldn't escape. As long as one was brave enough to try, anything was possible. Escaping. The man looked down at Yuan Dongji, who was fleeing at high speed with Lu Juanyu, and couldn't help but laugh. What a foolish woman, not cherishing a chance to wriggle out of death, she chooses death instead. After speaking, he turned into a large mass of black fog, chasing down Yuan Dongji with a speed far surpassing her escape, catching up to her in the blink of an eye. Below, Yuan Dongji still harbored hopes of escaping to safety. However, just as she flew less than 10,000 meters with Lu Juanyu, her space above was suddenly blanketed by a vast black fog, darkening the surroundings in an instant. Then, without giving her a chance to react, an enormous palm reached out from the fog, descending upon her with an overwhelming force like the night eclipsing day. Sensing the danger, Yuan Dongji unleashed her spiritual power in a frenzy, trying to break free from the shadow enveloping her. Unfortunately, an attack from an epic-level creature wasn't something she, a rare creature, could dodge. And very soon, with a loud boom, Yuan Dongji and Lu Juanyu, who were flying low and at high speed, were struck by the enormous palm as if hitting a fly, crashing heavily onto the ground, cracking the earth and kicking up dust into the air. Buzz! The enormous palm waved lightly, and the dust instantly dissipated. Immediately after, a deep crater riddled with a web of cracks starkly appeared on the ground. At the center of the crater, there were two figures, half of their bodies buried in the earth. It was none other than Yuan Dongji and Lu Juanyu, who had just been knocked down by a single palm. The former was severely injured, bleeding from the 7 orifices. The latter was even more grievously wounded, completely unconscious, his life force nearly exhausted, teetering on the brink of death. At the same time, in other areas of the battlefield, the situation was just as bleak. A multitude of Earth's powerhouses lay dead or wounded. Song Yuan, who had previously taken a moment to check on Yuan Dongji's injuries, was now critically wounded with a bloody hole in her abdomen, lying on the ground gasping for breath, waiting for death to come in despair. Likewise, Li Chuxin, Luo Yongjian, Li Moyu, Ma Ziwei, Zhou Suihong, Ma Zhenhe, and other teachers and students from Shanghai University were all severely injured, powerless against the invasion of the alien races. Nearly everyone on Earth's side had lost the will to fight, quietly awaiting death. The entire battlefield was a complete rout. The outcome of the battle was already clear. Given the situation, it was only a matter of time before city number 36 would fall to the alien races. The skies above the battlefield were shrouded in despair. Within the massive crater, Yuan Dongji stabilized her injuries as best as she could, struggling to pull her half-submerged body out of the ground and then immediately checking on Lu Juanyu's condition. Seeing that Lu Juanyu was critically injured with his life force almost extinguished, Yuan Dongji became anxious. Without hesitation, Yuan Dongji quickly took out a blood-red elixir and forced it into Lu Juanyu's mouth, barely keeping him alive to prevent complete death. Then, Yuan Dongji's thoughts moved, and she controlled the groundwater beneath the crater to burst forth, creating an opening on the surface of the crater. Next, she tossed Lu Juanyu into the opening, letting the groundwater carry him away from the battlefield. After all she had done, Yuan Dongji soared into the air, fleeing in the opposite direction of the groundwater flow, prepared to sacrifice herself to create a chance for Lu Juanwu to escape. All the above happened in the blink of an eye. Chapter 530, 304, 10,000-meter water dragon soars _2. The man high in the sky watched these scenes in the deep pit with disdainful amusement. He couldn't help but sneer. Ants always like to use what they think are clever means of escape, yet it is futile before the strong. As he spoke, the alien from the land of oblivion, boasting an epic-level biological status, had the thought and controlled 2 streaks of black fog to shoot out violently. One streak aimed at Yuan Dongji, who was fleeing across the ground. The other aimed at Lu Juanwu, who was moving away from the battlefield, following the flow of water deep underground. The 2 unleashed black fogs turned into 2 withered black hands, moving at great speed. In just a few seconds, they had recaptured the fleeing Yuan Dongji and Lu Juanwu. I gave you a chance, but it's a pity you were too foolish to see the situation clearly. Now you'll become a yin corpse. After saying this, the man's body exuded strands of black energy, which he slowly poured into Yuan Dongji's mouth, altering her body structure to turn her into a yin corpse. The moment the black energy invaded her mouth, Yuan Dongji's face showed a look of agony, and her once rosy and alluring lady's face suddenly turned dark yellow and lifeless. An ant with some beauty, watch in these conscious moments how your partner dies. The man spoke emotionlessly. As soon as he finished, he had the thought and dragged Lu Juanwu in front of himself, swallowing the dwindling vitality from Juanwu's body in front of King Han. Watching Lu Juanwu inch towards death in front of her, Yuan Dongji, hit by a double assault on both flesh and spirit, had eyes filled with despair, preferring death to this existence. In her despair, she could only bear the pain, close her eyes, and choose to be an ostrich, refusing to watch Juanwu die before her. Boom! Suddenly, a loud noise came from below, startling all beings on the battlefield. Yuan Dongji had no idea what had happened, but at the sound, she instinctively opened her eyes. What followed, and appeared before her eyes, instantly widened her gaze in sheer shock. Somehow, vast amounts of underground water erupted from beneath the earth, flooding the battlefield into a boundless ocean. Looking over, water columns rose sky-high, too tall to see the top. What's happening? Where did all this underground water come from? Is this an illusion before death? Yuan Dongji watched the ocean below, her shock slowly giving way to distraction. The scene before her had completely exceeded her understanding, leaving her utterly baffled. And not just her, all creatures on the battlefield were unclear about what had happened. The man, who was simultaneously devouring Lu Juanwu's vitality and pouring black energy into Yuan Dongji's mouth, didn't understand, nor did the dragon and phoenix kings soaring high above. All beings present wore faces of confusion and incomprehension, unknowingly watching as more and more underground water accumulated on the battlefield. What in the world is going on? High above the battlefield, a glamorous woman in a bright red robe turned to a man in blue and asked. The man in blue frowned and shook his head, indicating he didn't know what was happening either. The man and woman were the dragon and phoenix that had previously battled fiercely against the 3 legendary level leaders of the city. Having finished their battle, they had taken on human forms and hovered at the highest point above the battlefield, overlooking the strange scene unfolding below. As they felt utterly perplexed, the water columns on the sea's surface suddenly began moving towards the center, intertwining with each other, and quickly formed into a gargantuan water dragon. This water dragon was identical in form to the 100-meter water dragon previously controlled by Dongji. The only difference was that the water dragon now rapidly forming on the ocean surface far exceeded the 100-meter scale, even surpassing the kilometer level to reach a staggering 10,000 meters in length. Once the 10,000-meter water dragon formed, it immediately dominated the airspace over the battlefield, reflecting the now oceanic terrain in a brilliant azure glow. Yuan Dongji looked up at the suddenly formed 10,000-meter water dragon above, her face a portrait of disbelief, questioning whether she was dreaming. Then, a 10,000-meter water dragon charged in. It was Shen King Han. Astonishment. Lin Zikan makes his entrance, seizing the raging tide. He slays the legendary level dragon and phoenix beast kings. P.S. Bowing, seeking monthly pass and recommendation tickets. Afterward, the wood god won, everyone plunged into endless despair. All returned to Earth to hold the fort. Earth has domain power to suppress. Easier to defend. Enter the central region. Enter the relics, gain power, evolve madly. The central region is actually the very center of the abyss. The abyss from other domains all spread out from the abyss in the central region. Then, legendary level. After that, the situation turned around in an instant, and the Sun-Moon Sacred Land side was utterly routed. In the end, the Sun-Moon Sacred Land party claimed a significant victory in this great battle. The Earthlings evacuated the area entirely. Since Shen King Han was still trapped in the palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan stood alone, guarding the lone city and protecting King Han. City number 1. Lastly, with King Han's attributes, Lin Zikan fled into the abyss with King Han. It was identical to what he had dreamt. Next, the male lead used abyss monsters to slay legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, was the abyss master. Using abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the heavens and earth to change color, various phenomena, shocking everyone. Earth's great battle. Nuclear bombs. Mechanically modified humans enter the scene. Enter the central region, enter the relics, gain power, evolve madly. The central region is actually the very center of the abyss. The abyss from other domains all spread out from the abyss in the central region. Then, legendary level. After that, the situation turned around in an instant, and the Sun-Moon Sacred Land side was utterly routed. In the end, the Sun-Moon Sacred Land party claimed a significant victory in this great battle. The Earthlings evacuated the area entirely. Since Shen King Han was still trapped in the palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan stood alone, guarding the lone city and protecting King Han. City number 1. Lastly, with King Han's attributes, Lin Zikan fled into the abyss with King Han. It was identical to what he had dreamt. Next, the male lead used abyss monsters to slay legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, was the abyss master. Using abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the heavens and earth to change color, various phenomena, shocking everyone. Earth's great battle. Nuclear bombs. Mechanically modified humans enter the scene. Afterward, the wood god won, everyone plunged into endless despair. All returned to Earth to hold the fort. Earth has domain power to suppress. Easier to defend. Enter the central region, enter the relics, gain power, evolve madly. The central region is actually the very center of the abyss. The abyss from other domains all spread out from the abyss in the central region. Then, legendary level. After that, the situation turned around in an instant, and the Sun-Moon Sacred Land side was utterly routed. In the end, the Sun-Moon Sacred Land party claimed a significant victory in this great battle. The Earthlings evacuated the area entirely. Since Shen King Han was still trapped in the palace of Water God and couldn't leave, Lin Zikan stood alone, guarding the lone city and protecting King Han. City number 1. Lastly, with King Han's attributes, Lin Zikan fled into the abyss with King Han. It was identical to what he had dreamt. Next, the male lead used abyss monsters to slay legendary level experts or mythical level experts. The male lead, backed by the abyss, was the abyss master. Using abyss monsters to kill mythical level creatures caused the heavens and earth to change color, various phenomena, shocking everyone. Earth's great battle. Nuclear bombs. Mechanically modified humans enter the scene.